Welcome, beautiful Sigma ladies. Power built on performance always collapses in front of someone who doesn't care about the stage. History has always shown us one fascinating fact. The people who bring down tyrants are rarely the ones shouting the loudest, but the ones quietly dismantling the script. And that's exactly what happens when a Sigma female meets the personality type obsessed with control, dominance, and validation. She doesn't fight them head-on, because that would be giving them what they want: attention, recognition, a worthy opponent. Instead, she treats their entire performance like a bad audition tape. To her, their authority is more laugh track than leadership. And once she sees through the cracks, their so-called dominance doesn't just weaken, it unravels. This isn't about brute force or louder voices. It's about precision. A Sigma female destroys this personality type the way acid eats through metal, quietly, relentlessly, and without warning. Stick around, because what you're about to hear isn't just eye-opening. It's the kind of breakdown that might make you rethink every powerful person you've ever met and laugh at how fragile they really were. Number 1. She reveals their dependency on audience. Control-driven personalities feed on audience. They don't just crave power, they need someone to see it, acknowledge it, and ideally feel small because of it. Their entire performance depends on validation from the outside. Without it, the whole act collapses. This is where the Sigma female becomes their undoing. She doesn't give them the stage lights, the applause, or even the protest. She treats their performance like background noise, something not worth her time, and that indifference is more destructive than open resistance. The personality type obsessed with dominance thrives on reactions, whether it's fear, admiration, or even anger. Every reaction reinforces their illusion of control. The Sigma female denies them this fuel completely. She doesn't clap when they try to show off, and she doesn't cower when they turn threatening. She doesn't even argue when they bait her into confrontation. Instead, she offers silence, and that silence isn't weakness. It's demolition. Without an audience, the self-proclaimed leader looks like a person shouting into an empty room, exposed for how desperate they actually are. What makes this so brutal is how natural it is for her. She doesn't consciously plot to ruin their act. She simply doesn't care enough to participate. And that lack of engagement is what drives the dominant personality type insane. They need a crowd to validate their importance, but the Sigma female refuses to be one of those faces in the crowd. It's like cutting off oxygen from a fire. The flames don't go out instantly, but you can feel them suffocating. The longer she withholds recognition, the more obvious their dependency becomes. People start noticing that their power only works when others play along. Without a stage, their drama looks ridiculous. Without witnesses, their dominance feels hollow. The Sigma female doesn't expose them with loud declarations. She does it by quietly refusing to notice their act, and eventually, everyone else begins to see the fraud too. In the end, the destruction isn't loud or messy. It's slow, humiliating, and complete. The dominant personality finds themselves starved of the one thing they can't survive without: attention. And there's nothing more terrifying to them than realizing that one silent woman, sitting back with no interest in their show, has the power to erase their entire illusion. Number 2, she turns intimidation into self-exposure. When a Sigma female faces intimidation, something remarkable happens. The intended fear bounces back on the person trying to wield it. Most people use aggression, threats, or bluster to assert control, believing that fear will force compliance. But with a Sigma female, all of that effort doesn't work the way they expect. She doesn't flinch, she doesn't raise her defenses, and she doesn't even waste energy reacting. Her calm, unshakable presence makes the intimidation attempt look absurd. Suddenly, the person trying to scare her doesn't appear strong or commanding. They appear insecure, overcompensating, and even desperate. The power of her response, or rather her lack of response, turns the tables completely. Aggressors feed on reactions. They need acknowledgement that their tactics are working. But when nothing happens, their aggression exposes them. It reveals the cracks in their confidence, the reliance on fear as a tool, and the fragility behind their loud words or threatening gestures. What was meant to dominate her becomes a window into their own weakness. This isn't about physical strength or verbal sparring, it's psychological precision. The Sigma female understands that intimidation is rarely about her. It's about the insecurities of the person attempting it. By refusing to give them that validation, she exposes their true nature. Every shout, every glare, every attempt to unsettle her only makes them look smaller, not her. She turns their performance inside out without saying a word. Over time, repeated attempts at intimidation backfire entirely. People begin to notice the contrast. The aggressor is tense, reactive, and fragile, while she remains composed, unbothered, and entirely untouchable. Their power begins to evaporate because the fundamental truth is undeniable. Intimidation only works when the target fears you, and she does not. In short, a Sigma female doesn't just survive attempts to scare her, she weaponizes them. She forces the aggressor to reveal themselves fully, exposing their weakness to anyone paying attention. And what was meant to command respect instead earns ridicule. By standing firm, by refusing to flinch, she transforms every act of intimidation into a mirror that shows exactly who the aggressor really is. Fragile, vulnerable, and entirely ordinary beneath the performance of power. Number 3. She detects the desperation behind dominance. A Sigma female has an uncanny ability to see through the illusions that most people mistake for power. When others are impressed or intimidated by displays of dominance, she notices something entirely different: desperation. What looks like confidence, authority, or control is often just a carefully constructed facade designed to hide fear of being ordinary, unnoticed, or irrelevant. The more aggressive or overbearing someone appears, the clearer their insecurity becomes to her. She doesn't fall for the surface-level bravado that dominates social hierarchies. While the world may admire loud declarations, expensive gestures, or forced authority, she reads the subtext. Every overreaction, every insistence on control, every attempt to assert dominance is a signal of self-doubt and vulnerability. She understands that people who constantly need to prove themselves aren't actually strong. They're terrified of being exposed as ordinary, flawed, or insignificant. This insight gives her a quiet but devastating advantage. Where others feel pressure, intimidation, or awe, she feels clarity. She doesn't need to confront the person aggressively. She simply observes, interprets, and positions herself accordingly. Their attempts to appear powerful only make their weakness more transparent. It's a subtle form of destruction. She doesn't need to fight them on their own terms because she already knows exactly where they're weak. The beauty of her perception lies in how unnoticed it often is. Dominant personalities rarely suspect that someone is seeing behind their mask. They continue to operate as if their authority is unquestionable, all the while giving her the blueprint of their fears. She can anticipate their moves, predict their reactions, and, if necessary, dismantle their influence quietly. In essence, a Sigma female turns dominance on its head. Where others are intimidated or impressed, she sees fragility. Where others are manipulated by posturing, she sees a roadmap of fear. And while they labor to maintain their performance, she remains untouchable, fully aware that what everyone else mistakes for strength is nothing more than a desperate attempt to hide the ordinary within. Her recognition of this desperation isn't malicious, it's simply clarity. But the effect is brutal. Those who think they are untouchable become exposed, predictable, and powerless in ways they never imagined, all because she can see the truth hiding behind the performance of dominance. Number 4. She doesn't crave belonging. A Sigma female operates entirely outside the pressures of social conformity. While most people feel a constant tug to belong, to be accepted, or to secure their place within a group, she doesn't. Belonging is a choice for her, not a requirement, and that makes her fundamentally untouchable to the tactics dominant personalities use to control others. Those who rely on exclusion, peer pressure, or social leverage assume that cutting someone off from the group will force compliance. Against a Sigma female, these tactics fall flat because she doesn't derive her identity or power from approval. Dominant personalities instinctively exploit the fear of being left out. Their methods, gossip, social manipulation, ostracism, depend on the target caring enough to react, to bend, or to beg for inclusion. But she doesn't bend. She doesn't beg. She doesn't even notice the social spotlight they try to manipulate. Their power, built entirely on leveraging other people's need to fit in, becomes irrelevant when faced with someone who lives outside that system. Her independence isn't just emotional, it's strategic. She can navigate any social environment without needing validation, approval, or membership. While others scramble to appease, align, or defend their place, she operates freely, observing and moving as she chooses. This detachment disarms those who think control over the group equates to control over individuals. They quickly realize that exclusion tactics are meaningless, and the more they try, the more their efforts reveal desperation rather than authority. In effect, her lack of need for belonging is a kind of invisible armor. It's a position of quiet dominance in itself. She cannot be coerced through fear of isolation because isolation doesn't affect her. This makes her a unique threat to anyone who thrives on controlling through social hierarchies. The Sigma female isn't just unbothered by social politics. She uses her autonomy as a weapon, moving through spaces without dependence and exposing the fragility of those who try to manipulate others through the illusion of belonging. Ultimately, her freedom from the need to belong highlights a truth dominant personalities never want to admit. Influence is only powerful over those who depend on it. She depends on no one, belongs to no one, and in that she becomes untouchable, unshakable, and completely immune to the subtle, controlling games most people fall prey to. Number 5. She turns their authority into comedy. A Sigma female has an extraordinary ability to strip power-hungry personalities of their self-importance without ever raising her voice. While others might tremble, comply, or overanalyze, she sees their attempts at dominance for what they truly are: performance. Every grand gesture, every authoritative tone, every forced display of superiority becomes nothing more than theater to her eyes. She doesn't react with fear or awe. She reacts with clarity, amusement, and subtle detachment, and that's where the real dismantling begins. Power-hungry personalities rely heavily on perception. They feed on the respect, fear, or admiration of others to validate their dominance. Their authority only exists as long as people take it seriously. A Sigma female, however, refuses to participate in the script. She doesn't applaud, she doesn't flinch, and she doesn't overcompensate to appease them. Her indifference is like a mirror reflecting the absurdity of their performance back to the world. What was meant to command respect now looks hollow, exaggerated, and in many cases ridiculous. The brilliance of her approach is subtle but devastating. She doesn't confront or humiliate overtly. She simply refuses to treat their authority as legitimate. By treating their grandstanding as theater, she forces bystanders to see the truth too. The supposed dominance they flaunt is fragile, dependent on external validation, and often comically overblown. People around her start questioning, consciously or not, why they ever feared or admired this person in the first place. Her ability to turn authority into comedy also undermines the psychological foundation of the power-hungry type. They rely on creating a sense of inevitability, a perception that they are in control and untouchable. When someone treats their performance as a spectacle rather than a threat, that illusion crumbles. Each overblown act, each desperate attempt to assert control only highlights their insecurity. In short, she doesn't destroy their authority with confrontation or aggression. She dismantles it with perception. She exposes the performance for what it is, turning their supposed power into something laughable, even for onlookers. By doing nothing more than observing with intelligence, wit, and composure, she reduces the mighty and intimidating to mere theater, and in that quiet exposure lies her ultimate, unshakable power. Number 6. She doesn't compete on their stage. A Sigma female understands that control-driven personalities thrive on arenas of competition. These people build their sense of power by creating situations where others must fight for recognition, dominance, or approval. They construct hierarchies, challenge boundaries, and escalate conflicts to prove themselves. Most individuals seeing a challenge step onto the stage, drawn into the fight, or trapped in the game. But a Sigma female doesn't play by those rules. She refuses the arena entirely. By refusing to compete on their stage, she immediately undermines the foundation of their power. Control-driven personalities rely on engagement. They need participants to validate their authority, to react to their provocations, and to struggle within the system they impose. When a Sigma female abstains, she removes the fuel that sustains their dominance. Her non-participation renders their efforts irrelevant, like a show performed to an empty audience. The fight they expect, the tension they hope to create, simply doesn't exist because she refuses to step into their frame of reference. This refusal isn't passive, it's deliberate and strategic. She doesn't need to prove herself to anyone or engage in petty battles for status or recognition. She knows that any engagement on their terms only strengthens the illusion of their importance. By standing outside the arena, she simultaneously preserves her energy and exposes their desperation. What was meant to establish dominance instead becomes a display of futility. Her detachment is a form of quiet dominance itself. Others may be drawn into the fight, consumed by the rules of engagement set by the control-driven person, but she remains unshaken, autonomous, and invisible to the manipulative game. Her refusal to participate forces observers to see the absurdity of the aggressor's tactics, further diminishing their perceived authority. Ultimately, she doesn't have to fight to win. By choosing not to enter their constructed arenas, she strips the aggressor of relevance before the battle even begins. Their power depends on competition and acknowledgement. She gives neither. In this way, a Sigma female dismantles the control-driven personality with subtlety, intelligence, and strategic distance, proving that real strength often lies not in confrontation, but in knowing when to walk away, or better yet, never step onto the stage at all. Number 7. She detects the hidden script. A Sigma female has an instinctive ability to see the patterns behind people's behavior, and when it comes to controlling personalities, this skill becomes lethal. Every person who thrives on control follows a script, whether they're aware of it or not. They rely on predictable tactics: intimidation to create fear, validation seeking to manipulate admiration, or guilt to force compliance. These behaviors are rehearsed, repeated, and refined because the goal is always the same: maintaining dominance. Most people are so caught up in reacting to the performance that they fail to notice the mechanics behind it. A Sigma female doesn't just notice, she understands it instantly. She reads the hidden script like subtitles running beneath the surface of every interaction. When someone tries to intimidate her, she sees the pattern behind the anger, the insecurity that fuels the aggression. When they seek validation, she recognizes the desperation lurking beneath the charm. When they deploy guilt, she identifies the calculated manipulation designed to provoke compliance. Nothing escapes her notice. She doesn't fall for the illusion of control because she understands that their power only exists as long as others participate in the narrative they've written for themselves. What makes this so devastating is that she doesn't need to call them out directly. Simply by recognizing the script and refusing to react, she exposes the control attempt for what it is. To outside observers, the manipulator's tactics begin to look transparent and predictable, even ridiculous. Her understanding of their mechanics renders their efforts meaningless. She doesn't escalate the conflict because escalation would give them the validation they crave. Instead, she disarms them through comprehension and composure. The Sigma female's insight into the hidden script gives her freedom and leverage. She can anticipate moves before they happen, neutralize manipulation without confrontation, and maintain complete autonomy. The controlling personality, who thrives on secrecy and surprise, suddenly finds themselves exposed. Their power crumbles quietly, invisibly, and irrevocably, because she's already 3 steps ahead, reading the lines they think no one else can see. In essence, she turns their own method against them. The script that once ensured their dominance now becomes a blueprint for their undoing, and all she has to do is observe, understand, and refuse to participate. Number 8. Her silence shreds their ego. Ego-driven personalities survive on reactions. Every word they speak, every gesture they make is calculated to provoke acknowledgement, admiration, or fear. They thrive on being noticed, validated, and feared. The louder they are, the more dependent they become on the responses of others to reinforce their self-image. This is where a Sigma female holds the ultimate advantage. She doesn't play their game. She doesn't applaud, argue, or react. She simply remains silent, and that silence is more devastating than any confrontation could ever be. Her silence is not passive, it's a weapon. By refusing to engage, she strips the ego-driven person of the attention and validation they crave. Without reactions, their power evaporates. The threats, posturing, and displays of dominance that normally command influence suddenly fall flat, because the audience they rely on has withdrawn. What they intended to be a display of strength becomes an exhibition of futility. Their ego, which depends entirely on acknowledgement, is shredded quietly, invisibly, and completely. The brilliance of this tactic lies in its subtlety. Most people think power comes from confrontation or direct opposition, but she knows the real weakness of an ego-driven personality: dependence. They cannot sustain their dominance without someone to fuel it. Her silence removes that fuel entirely. She doesn't need to argue or prove anything. She simply exists, unbothered, refusing to grant them the validation they seek. Over time, repeated exposure to her composure and non-reaction exposes the fragility beneath the ego. Others begin to see that the so-called authority or dominance was never real. It was a performance that relied entirely on participation. The more they try to force a reaction, the more absurd their efforts appear. Their self-importance crumbles not with noise or conflict, but with the quiet power of someone who refuses to play along. In essence, her silence is both shield and weapon. It protects her from manipulation while simultaneously dismantling the very foundation of their influence. An ego-driven personality, accustomed to controlling situations and bending others to their will, finds themselves powerless, exposed, and irrelevant, all because she refuses to give them the one thing they need most: attention. Nothing eats an egotist faster than being ignored, and the Sigma female wields that truth effortlessly. Number 9. She turns power plays into dead ends. A Sigma female doesn't fall for the traps most people get caught in. Manipulators and control-driven personalities rely on creating elaborate power plays, weaving webs of obligation, expectation, or subtle coercion to steer others where they want. Most people step right into the maze, reacting, negotiating, and getting tangled in the rules the manipulator sets. But she operates differently. She sees the structure of the game clearly and never treats it as a contest she must win on their terms. Instead, she quietly reroutes it, bending it without bending herself. Her approach is invisible but devastating. While a manipulator expects compliance, resistance, or at least emotional engagement, she provides neither. She doesn't argue, she doesn't defend, she doesn't get frustrated. By refusing to engage in the ways they anticipate, she forces their power play to unravel naturally. Their tactics rely on participation to function. When she silently steps outside the intended path, the maze collapses under its own complexity. What makes this especially effective is the subtlety. She doesn't confront the manipulator directly or reveal their strategies to the world. She simply navigates around them with intelligence and composure, neutralizing every attempt to control without creating conflict. Where others might waste energy fighting the manipulator on their terms, she conserves her power, letting the aggressor's own schemes work against them. Their clever maneuvers, designed to ensnare, turn into dead ends because she refuses to play along. Observers may not even notice what's happening at first. The manipulator continues their performance expecting drama, resistance, or submission. Meanwhile, she quietly sidesteps every obstacle, leaving the manipulator frustrated, exposed, and increasingly ineffective. The more elaborate their scheme, the more spectacularly it fails, because her indifference and strategic intelligence turn their own power against them. In the end, her strength lies in patience and perception. She doesn't have to fight or dominate to win. By understanding the mechanics of manipulation and refusing to participate, she dismantles power plays effortlessly. Where others stumble, get lost, or compromise themselves, She turns the game into a series of dead ends for the manipulator, proving that true control comes not from aggression, but from the clarity and autonomy to navigate around it. Number 10. She forces them into transparency. A Sigma female has a way of unraveling the carefully constructed masks that dominant personalities hide behind. These individuals rely on performance, posturing, confidence, and authority to create an image of strength and control. They expect others to engage with the facade, to respond with fear, respect, or admiration, but she refuses to participate in the act. She doesn't compliment, applaud, or react the way they anticipate. Her refusal to play along creates a quiet pressure that they cannot resist. Dominant personalities thrive on others' perceptions. Their power depends on the illusion of confidence and capability. When someone refuses to validate that illusion, the mask begins to crack. The Sigma female doesn't need to push or expose them overtly. Her presence alone and her unwavering indifference are enough to make them reveal cracks they intended to hide. Every exaggerated gesture, every forced display of dominance, every attempt at intimidation begins to betray insecurity rather than project strength. The process is subtle but devastating. To the untrained eye, the dominant personality may appear unchanged, still commanding attention, still performing authority. But the Sigma female's clarity forces small inconsistencies to become visible, hesitations, overcompensation, or desperation that betray their inner uncertainty. In trying to maintain the mask in front of someone who refuses to react, they inadvertently reveal themselves fully, exposing the very vulnerabilities they were trying to conceal. Once the mask slips, the effect is profound. Everyone around begins to see what she has always seen: the facade of control, the performative confidence, the underlying fragility. Their carefully curated image of dominance collapses not because of confrontation, argument, or sabotage, but because she refused to engage in the performance that gave it life. In essence, the Sigma female doesn't fight the dominant personality directly. She forces transparency simply by existing on her own terms and refusing to validate their illusions. In doing so, she exposes them to the world, stripping away their power and revealing the insecurities they hoped no one would notice. Their strength was only ever in the mask, and she ensures it falls away quietly, efficiently, and completely. Number 11, she doesn't bend to fear economics. A Sigma female doesn't respond to fear the way most people do, and that's what makes her unstoppable against controlling personalities. Those who seek dominance often operate on a simple principle. Fear is currency. They weaponize it in countless forms: threats, social pressure, intimidation, consequences, expecting that others will bend, comply, or compromise simply to avoid discomfort, loss, or embarrassment. Most people are wired to calculate risk and adjust their behavior to preserve safety or status. Not her. She refuses to participate in that economy. Her power lies in detachment. She doesn't fear loss in the same way others do, because she doesn't measure her value or security by external approval, possessions, or control. Threats, coercion, and intimidation have no purchase on her psyche. When a controlling person tries to leverage fear to bend her will, they discover their tactics are ineffective, impotent, and ultimately meaningless. What they thought was power evaporates the moment it meets someone unconcerned with their currency. This isn't reckless defiance, it's strategic clarity. She knows exactly what motivates a manipulator, and she deliberately removes the leverage. By refusing to let fear dictate her decisions, she dismantles the manipulator's influence without confrontation. They may escalate, push harder, or try new angles, but each attempt only highlights their dependence on fear as a tool. In contrast, her composure and autonomy make them appear desperate, weak, and unconvincing. Living outside the economy of fear gives her an almost untouchable advantage. While others calculate risk, weigh consequences, or negotiate to preserve appearances, she moves freely. Decisions are made on her terms, unshaped by intimidation or coercion. The very system that gives controlling personalities power collapses in her presence because she refuses to acknowledge it. In essence, her immunity to fear economics is both shield and weapon. She doesn't just resist manipulation, she exposes its fragility. Controlling individuals, whose entire power depends on making others afraid, are left powerless. They can issue threats, apply pressure, or try to intimidate, but against someone who fears nothing, their currency is worthless. By existing outside their economy, she turns their most relied-upon tool into irrelevance, leaving them exposed, impotent, and unmasked. Number 12. Her independence cancels their ownership. A Sigma female's independence is the ultimate threat to possessive, controlling personalities. These types rely on dependency to maintain influence. Emotional, social, or even financial reliance becomes their weapon. They assume that people need them, that they can dictate terms because others can't function without their approval, guidance, or presence. But a Sigma female doesn't fit that mold. She's not dependent on anyone for validation, security, or a sense of self-worth. Her autonomy is absolute, and that autonomy renders their attempts at ownership meaningless. The power of possessive types comes from creating constraints and boundaries that others are expected to respect or fear. They thrive on the idea that leaving or defying them comes with consequences. But a Sigma female moves according to her own rules. The moment she chooses to disengage, walk away, or remove herself from their orbit, the entire framework of control collapses. They cannot threaten her into staying because she doesn't owe allegiance or obedience. Their leverage, carefully built through manipulation or intimidation, becomes powerless the instant she exercises her independence. What makes her independence so devastating is how effortless it appears. She doesn't boast or issue ultimatums. She simply exists on her own terms. The possessive personality, accustomed to dictating dynamics, suddenly finds themselves facing someone they cannot influence, predict, or contain. Their strategies, clinging, coercing, or controlling, fail because she has no need to conform or compromise. Her freedom exposes the fragility of their authority, making it clear that their ownership was always an illusion dependent on others' submission. Her ability to walk away isn't reactive, it's preventative. She sets the unspoken rule that she cannot be owned, constrained, or reduced, and that rule alone dismantles the possessive personality's sense of power. No manipulation, threat, or demand can hold sway because she lives outside their control. In essence, her independence is a silent annihilation of possessiveness. By refusing to be dependent, she cancels the foundation on which control relies. What was meant to bind, intimidate, or command her becomes irrelevant. She doesn't fight to prove freedom. She simply embodies it, leaving possessive types powerless, exposed, and ultimately irrelevant in her world. Sigma females aren't just strong. They're untouchable, untethered, and unapologetically themselves. They dismantle control-driven, ego-obsessed, and manipulative personalities, not through aggression, but through clarity, composure, and strategic autonomy. Where others react, they observe. Where others bend, they stand. Where others seek validation or approval, they walk freely, unchained. Every intimidation tactic, every power play, every attempt at manipulation collapses quietly under their presence. Silence exposes ego. Independence cancels ownership, and refusal to participate turns dominance into absurdity. They don't compete on the arenas others are trapped in. They reroute games until control evaporates. They force transparency without confrontation, detect desperation behind every performance, and refuse to live within the currency of fear. In short, a Sigma female doesn't just survive interactions with controlling personalities. She dismantles them effortlessly, turning their power against them and revealing the fragility behind every mask, act, and strategy. Her strength is subtle, precise, and devastating, proving that true influence doesn't require shouting, forcing, or fighting. It requires presence, autonomy, and the refusal to be anything less than fully herself. If you found this breakdown eye-opening and empowering, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Don't forget to like, comment, and share, because these truths are meant to be seen, understood, and experienced by everyone who refuses to be controlled.